My name is Emma Chen, and my story begins with dirt under my fingernails and the delicate scent of lilies floating on the air. My little flower shop, Blooming Dreams, was nestled between the towering skyscrapers of downtown Seattle, a vibrant burst of life amidst the gray monotony of steel and concrete. Another orchid gave up the ghost. I asked Sarah, my sole employee, as she gingerly removed a wilted plant from the front display. "Third one this week," she replied with a weary sigh, her brow furrowed. "Maybe it's time to stop stocking them." I shook my head, taking the plant from her hands with care. "No, we just need to figure out what's wrong and adjust their care. Every plant can thrive with the right attention." That belief had been my guiding principle since childhood. Growing up in rural China, I spent endless hours in my grandmother's garden, absorbing the unspoken language of plants. While other children played with toys, I buried myself in the intricacies of cultivation and the mysteries of hybridization. "Emma, you have magic in your hands," my grandmother would say as she watched me coax sickly plants back to life. "Remember, the strongest flowers bloom in the harshest conditions." At the time, her words seemed abstract. Now they were the foundation of my life. My journey to America began with a scholarship to study botanical sciences. The transition was far from easy: new culture, new language, and an unrelenting need to prove myself. Yet, like the wildflowers I admired, I thrived in unlikely soil. That's how I met James Wheeler. He stumbled literally into my life during my final year of grad school. Rushing to a business meeting, he barreled into my research greenhouse, scattering soil samples everywhere. "I'm so sorry," he exclaimed, crouching to gather the mess. "I wasn't watching where Whoa, what are these?" His gaze landed on my pride and joy. Hybrid roses I'd spent months perfecting. Their deep purple petals glimmered with silver edges as though dusted with moonlight. "They're my thesis project," I said, hastily inspecting the blooms for damage. "I'm developing resilient varieties for urban environments." "They're stunning," he murmured, and for the first time, I really saw him. Tall, sharp-suited, with warm eyes and a disarming smile. "I'm James, by the way, and I think you just saved my day. I need a unique gift for a client." I sold him 3 roses that day. A week later, he returned, not for flowers, but to ask me to dinner. Our love grew like a well-tended garden, steady, natural, and full of discovery. James worked in corporate finance, a world of sharp suits and strategic deals. But he appreciated the artistry of my work, and I began to admire the structure in his. "You see the world differently than anyone I've ever known," he told me one evening as we strolled through a botanical garden. A year later, we married in a simple ceremony adorned with flowers I'd grown just for the occasion. It was perfect until I met his family. The warning signs appeared early, at our engagement dinner. James's mother, Victoria Wheeler, scrutinized me with icy precision, while his sister Patricia barely hid her smirks. "A florist?" Victoria asked, her voice laden with disbelief. "I thought you said she studied sciences, James." "She has a master's in botanical sciences," James defended. "Emma's work is revolutionary." Victoria waved a dismissive hand. "Yes, but surely you won't continue with that little hobby after the wedding? The Wheeler name has certain standards." James tensed beside me, but I held my ground, recalling my grandmother's words. "Actually," I said evenly, "I'm opening my own shop after graduation. The lease is already signed." The silence was deafening. Patricia raised an eyebrow, her lips curling. "A shop? How entrepreneurial." "Well," Victoria sighed, "every family has its quirks. Just keep it discreet, dear." James squeezed my hand under the table, but he didn't speak up. It was the first crack in our otherwise perfect world. Over the next 2 years, I channeled my energy into my shop, a labor of love that Victoria despised. What none of them knew, not even James, was that I had a plan. During my master's program, I developed patented hybrids, disease-resistant, longer-lasting varieties that could thrive anywhere. Suppliers showed interest, but I played my cards close. "Emma, you've got to see this." Sarah burst into my office one morning, brandishing her tablet. Wheeler Corp just announced a sustainable luxury hotel initiative with rooftop gardens. I smiled, setting down my pruning shears. My in-laws had no idea that their grand vision was about to intersect with mine. That evening, James came home beaming. "Did you hear about the announcement? Dad's been working on this for months. It's going to transform the company." "That's wonderful," I said, arranging a bouquet of my special roses. Mom's hosting a dinner to celebrate this weekend, he added hesitantly. They want us there. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure your mother wants the shopkeeper at her event? He ran a hand through his hair, his telltale sign of unease. They're trying, Emma, please. Reluctantly, I agreed. That night, as I finalized a deal that would secure my hybrid's future, I received an email that made me smile. Everything was falling into place. The dinner was held at the Wheeler estate, a mansion dripping with opulence and thinly veiled contempt. Victoria greeted me with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. How's your shop, dear? Still managing to scrape by. The room chuckled politely. Patricia, now a senior executive, smirked into her glass. It's quaint, really, she added. We're working with top-tier experts for the hotel gardens, far beyond the scope of a retail shop. I smiled, unbothered. If only they knew. The dinner unfolded with its usual symphony of veiled barbs and carefully crafted insults. James remained uncomfortably quiet, his occasional apologetic glances doing little to shield me from the barrage. His silence, though familiar, was no less painful. So Emma, Victoria said, her voice cutting through the room like fine crystal, James tells me you're often at the shop late into the evening. It must be exhausting dealing with retail customers all day. Surely you've considered something more appropriate for a Wheeler. I set down my fork deliberately, meeting her gaze without flinching. Actually, the dining room door creaked open, interrupting me. The sudden hush that fell over the table was palpable as everyone turned to see who had entered. Victoria's polished smile faltered the moment she recognized the man standing in the doorway. Marcus, Victoria exclaimed, practically launching herself from her seat. What an unexpected delight. We weren't expecting you until next week's board meeting. Marcus Chen, a commanding presence in any room, smiled politely, his sharp eyes sweeping across the table before landing on me. I heard there was a celebration tonight. Thought I'd stop by. Hope I'm not intruding. Patricia, ever eager to align herself with power, quickly motioned to the empty seat beside her. Not at all, Marcus. Please join us. We were just discussing our exciting hotel project. Ah, the Green Hotels Initiative, Marcus said, his tone betraying little. Actually, that's part of why I'm here. His gaze returned to me and his smile widened. Emma, could we have a moment? The silence was deafening. Victoria's carefully curated composure cracked as confusion etched across her face. You know Emma. Marcus laughed lightly. Know her? Emma has been one of our most valuable partners for 2 years. Those revolutionary hybrid plants you're using in your hotel project? They're all her creations. Victoria's expression froze mid-smile. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. That's impossible, Patricia stammered. She runs a little flower shop. A flower shop that's been ground zero for some of the most innovative botanical research in recent years. Marcus corrected smoothly. Emma's hybrids are transformative, beautiful, resilient, and exactly what the Asian market demands. In fact, that's why I'm here tonight. He stepped forward, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. The board approved your terms, Emma. We're ready to proceed with exclusive distribution rights for all 15 of your patented varieties. James finally broke his silence, his voice hoarse. Emma, what's going on? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Remember the hybrid varieties I worked on during grad school? The ones you said were incredible? I've been refining them ever since. Now, they're ready for mass production. Mass production, Victoria echoed faintly, as if the words themselves were foreign. Indeed, Marcus said, clearly enjoying himself. Emma's hybrids are uniquely suited to luxury hotels and high-end developments. They're durable, exquisite, and most importantly, exclusive. The licensing fees alone are significant. Patricia's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering the silence as it hit the table. The deep red liquid spread across the immaculate tablecloth like a blood stain. No one moved to clean it. But you're just a florist, Victoria sputtered. You arrange bouquets and water plants. That shop, I said calmly, has been my research and development lab. Every plant, every arrangement has been part of an experiment. We've collected years of data that's now invaluable. Marcus nodded. Which is why we're not stopping with licensing. We'd like to fund your continued research, Emma. The board is prepared to offer a $50 million annual development budget. Victoria's face drained of color as her world unraveled. James stared at me as though seeing a stranger. Patricia's mouth opened and closed, no words escaping. Finally, Patricia found her voice. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked evenly. From the moment I joined this family, you've made it clear how you see me. As a simple shopkeeper, someone beneath you. What would change if I told you? But James knew, didn't he? Victoria demanded, her tone accusatory as she turned to her son. James shook his head slowly. I didn't. No, I said quietly. You didn't? You saw what you wanted to see, just like the rest of your family. Marcus cleared his throat, reclaiming the room's attention. There's one more thing. Given the importance of Emma's hybrids to the hotel project, we'd like her to oversee the entire supply chain. To that end, we're proposing to acquire controlling interest in Wheeler Corp's botanical division. Victoria's head snapped up, her carefully maintained composure cracking. You want us to report to her? Actually, I interjected. I already do. I finalized the purchase of Green Life Industries, your primary supplier, this morning. Chaos erupted. Patricia shouted about betrayal and corporate hierarchy, while Victoria collapsed back into her chair, clutching her fan as though it could revive her sinking pride. James said nothing, his silence louder than the clamor around us. This is unacceptable. Victoria finally screeched. James, you can't allow this. I turned to my husband, my voice calm but firm. James hasn't been part of my business decisions, just as he's never been part of your constant belittling. He didn't speak up then, and I doubt he will now. Emma, James began weakly, but I cut him off with a look. Marcus touched my shoulder gently. Shall we? He asked, holding the contracts in hand. As we left the dining room, Victoria's thin, strained voice followed us. James, do something. But there was nothing left to do. The walls of their assumptions had crumbled, leaving only the truth they had refused to see. In my spacious office at Chen Agro Corp's Seattle headquarters, Marcus and I finalized the contracts. The city lights sparkled like distant stars, a reminder of how far I had come. You could have told them sooner, Marcus said, watching me sign the final document. Would it have made a difference? I asked. They needed this moment to understand the cost of underestimating someone. And James? I hesitated, the pen hovering over the page. That's a conversation for another day. When I returned home, James was waiting, his silhouette framed by the darkened window. Were you ever going to tell me? He asked, his voice low. Would you have listened? I countered. Or would you have seen only what your family sees? That's not fair, he said, his voice breaking. I loved you for who you are. Did you? I asked quietly. Or did you love the idea of the wife who made you look broad-minded? The florist you could see past. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The weeks following that fateful dinner party marked a seismic shift, not only for Wheeler Corp, but for the lives orbiting its influence. News of the revelation spread like wildfire through Seattle's corporate circles, altering alliances and reshaping the power dynamics of an elite that prided itself on appearances. Victoria Wheeler, ever the consummate society strategist, launched a campaign to salvage her reputation. Emma always had promise, she declared at a high-profile charity gala, her voice strategically loud. We simply believed in giving her space to realize it. Though I wasn't present, Sarah, my shop manager and newfound informant, relished relaying such moments. She came by the shop, Sarah reported one morning, barely suppressing her laughter. Asked if she could join our exclusive client list. I looked up from the research report I was reviewing. What did you say? That we're no longer taking retail clients, Sarah grinned. You should have seen her face. Patricia, meanwhile, found her once unquestioned authority at Wheeler Corp eroding rapidly. Board members who had previously dismissed my contributions now sought my guidance on critical decisions. Her attempts to reassert control were met with quiet, decisive corrections. At our first official board meeting, I reviewed her proposal for the hotel gardens. These maintenance projections are outdated, I pointed out, displaying comparative data on the screen. The hybrids require specialized care. Unless you prefer, we use standard varieties, which would undermine the exclusivity we've marketed. Patricia's cheeks flushed as she sat back in her chair, silenced by the weight of evidence. While corporate battles played out in boardrooms, a quieter, more personal reckoning unfolded at home. James and I circled each other warily, the foundations of our marriage unsettled. One evening, I found him in my home office, staring at the framed patents on the wall. "I remember when you created this," he said, his fingers brushing the glass. "I thought they were just pretty flowers." "They were never just flowers, James," I said. "They were my dreams, my future, and I tried to share them with you." He turned, guilt and frustration etched into his features. "Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" "Because trust isn't silence," I replied. "Every time your family dismissed me, every time they belittled my work, you said nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I was trying to keep the peace." "No," I said softly. "You were taking the easy way out." The next day brought an unexpected visitor. Richard Wheeler, usually the quiet observer, stood at my office door. "May I come in?" he asked. I gestured to the chair opposite me, curious. "I owe you an apology," he began. "For 2 years, I've watched as Victoria and Patricia undermined you, and I said nothing. That was wrong." "Why now?" I asked, wary. His expression softened with regret. "Because you've done what I never had the courage to do. Challenge the Wheeler way of doing things. This company needs leadership, not legacy." He handed me a folder. "I'm stepping down as chairman. I'd like to recommend you as my successor." I blinked, stunned. "That's unexpected." "You've already proven yourself," he said simply. Before I could respond, James burst into the room, his argument with my assistant echoing through the hallway. He froze when he saw his father. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Richard stood, straightening his tie. The right thing for once. After Richard left, I explained the situation to James. He sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "Chairman of Wheeler Corp," he murmured. "Why are you here, James?" I asked gently. He looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About me. For years, I've lived as the perfect Wheeler son, never questioning anything. And in doing so, I failed you. I want to make it right." "How?" I asked. "I've requested a transfer to the Asian division," he said. "If you'll have me, I want to go with you. Not as the Wheeler heir, but as your partner." Tears pricked my eyes. "You'd leave everything here." "Everything I'm leaving is meaningless without you," he said simply. 2 months later, Victoria hosted another dinner party. I wasn't there, of course. James and I were in Singapore, overseeing the installation of my hybrid gardens in a flagship luxury hotel. Sarah sent me a video from the event. Victoria, tipsy and effusive, regaling guests with tales of her brilliant daughter-in-law. Patricia, meanwhile, had taken a position at a rival firm, unwilling to endure the company's new dynamics. Richard, now serving as an advisor, worked alongside me to steer Wheeler Corp into its next chapter. As our plane descended into Singapore's glittering skyline, James reached for my hand. "Ready for our new adventure?" he asked. I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Always." The real triumph wasn't in proving anyone wrong or claiming titles. It was in staying true to myself, nurturing my dreams through the storms of judgment and doubt. My little flower shop had bloomed into a legacy beyond what anyone imagined, except perhaps me, because I had always believed that with care, patience, and resilience, even the smallest seed could transform into something extraordinary.